Lately, there have been instances where individuals ventured into zoo enclosures they shouldn't have, resulting in tragic outcomes, often for the animals involved. However, today's narrative sheds light on a different story, one where a man willingly risked his life by entering a zoo enclosure despite numerous warnings. The events that transpired on that fateful day left everyone deeply moved. Sometimes, our lives intersect with others, whether they are fellow humans or creatures of the wild. Upon reflection, we realize that a series of steps led us to these defining moments. If even the smallest details had changed, these interactions might never have occurred, altering the course of events significantly. Such is the case in our story today. Had a few things unfolded differently, two paths might never have crossed, leading to an entirely distinct outcome. Jojo, the chimpanzee, was originally born in the wild, and for a brief period, life was relatively good. Then tragedy struck when poachers took the life of his mother, leaving the young chimp unable to fend for himself. Without a mother, the rest of Jojo's family abandoned him. It was a dire situation, and his survival hinged on human intervention. Ironically, human involvement had initially disrupted his life in the wild, but it would also serve as his lifeline. Jojo was cared for in several sanctuaries before finding his way to the newly constructed exhibit at the Detroit Zoo. At the time, this exhibit was considered state-of-the-art, offering ample space for the chimpanzees to play and live in an environment as close to their natural habitat as possible. It appeared to be the best possible situation for Jojo, who could no longer return to the wild. That is, until that one tragic day. The other half of this unfolding story featured Rick Swope, a man who dedicated himself to hard work and never considered himself a hero. As a truck driver, Rick spent extended periods away from his family. Consequently, he cherished the moments when he could engage in family activities with his wife and their 3 children. Upon hearing about the new chimp enclosure, the children eagerly expressed their desire to see the chimpanzees. The family conducted research on these animals, and Rick and his wife emphasized that despite their admirable appearance, chimpanzees could be dangerous. They possessed far greater strength than humans and were remarkably intelligent creatures, capable of understanding more than people gave them credit for. This information was intended to enhance the family's zoo experience, fostering a greater understanding and respect for the animals they would encounter. The family planned to observe the creatures safely from the designated viewing area, with the chimps securely enclosed and humans separated by protective railings. When the family arrived at the zoo, they found it already bustling with visitors. It seemed as though the entire Detroit population had gathered to witness the new enclosure, leaving them with no option but to forge ahead. The children were determined to see the animals, and so they did. The day was filled with numerous zoo attractions, including a detour for ice cream, all under the backdrop of perfect weather. It was one of those extraordinary days when everything felt perfect, until it took an unexpected turn. The line for the chimp enclosure was long, and the family patiently waited to reach the front and catch a glimpse of the playful monkeys. As Rick stood before the chimp enclosure, he was struck by the realization that the chimpanzees appeared smaller than humans. Considering their incredible power, Rick had anticipated the chimpanzees to be much larger. Laughter filled the air as bystanders enjoyed the sight of 2 playful chimps within the enclosure. Some zoo staff members even observed the scene with smiles on their faces. In the midst of this interaction, one chimp stood out, Jojo, the monkey who had lost both his family and his freedom. Later, experts reviewing the footage had a different interpretation of the events. They suggested that it wasn't mere playfulness. Instead, Jojo seemed to be trying to escape from a more dominant male who showed displeasure toward the smaller chimp. If this analysis held true, Jojo was already in a highly stressful situation that was about to worsen dramatically. The enclosure was surrounded by water, a safety measure that was once common in animal enclosures to prevent escapes. However, over the years, many zoos had removed these water barriers from monkey enclosures, deeming them too hazardous for the animals. In front of the onlookers, Jojo slipped and fell into the water. Chimpanzees are not proficient swimmers, and he began to drown rapidly. Rick scanned the crowd, expecting the zoo staff to intervene and save the animal in distress. However, as the bystanders implored them to act, the staff hesitated, citing safety protocols and the potential danger involved. It became evident that no one would step forward to help. Rick couldn't bear to witness the monkey's desperate plea for assistance go unanswered. He locked eyes with Jojo, whose gaze resembled that of a fellow human in need. Without a second thought, Rick took action. Climbing over a security wall, he leaped into the water, disregarding the zoo staff's shouts to exit. Rick's focus shifted entirely to the animal that had sunk to the bottom. He grasped Jojo, but their slippery struggle made it challenging to maintain a hold. The onlookers guided him through the ordeal. Eventually, Rick managed to secure the chimp. At first, Jojo appeared lifeless, causing Rick to fear he might need to perform CPR on a chimpanzee. To Rick's relief, Jojo seemed to comprehend that he was being aided, and his exhaustion from the water and the earlier chase with the dominant male made him less resistant. Together, they reached the edge of the water. However, the moat was designed to confine animals within, not allow them to escape. Rick faced another challenge as Jojo kept slipping back into the water. Some bystanders urged him to stay with Jojo, potentially endangering himself even further, a curious contradiction to their previous reluctance to help. Undeterred, Rick pressed on. In a heartwarming gesture, he went beyond merely placing Jojo on the water's edge. Rick climbed out of the enclosure, pulling Jojo over the cables intended to keep the chimps away from the water. Gently, he set the exhausted chimp on the ground, providing him with the opportunity to recover. Rick would have stayed longer, but another male chimp charged at him, teeth bared. It was time to escape, and Rick splashed back into the water, crossed to the other side, and climbed out of the enclosure. Rick had never considered himself a hero, but in the eyes of many, he was exactly that. As the story came to a close, viewers were left with profound gratitude for witnessing this incredible tale of human compassion and courage. Join us again for more stories about the extraordinary connections between animals and the humans whose lives they touch.